I could see them instantly run towards me and I knew I was screwed. Hello and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name's Amy. I'm originally from Toronto, Canada, and I create travel content for a living. And this is not really a typical travel video that I would do here on my channel, but because there are a lot of new faces that have subscribed recently, I wanted to share one of my scariest travel experiences and get back to some of the story times that I used to share on this channel. So let's get into it. Really quickly before I jump into the story, I'd love if you could hit subscribe to show some support to this channel so I can keep putting out these storytime videos and other travel content that you want to see. As a little background, I actually lived in Cape Town for over 7 months in total on 3 separate occasions, and I have a lot of experience living in different areas of Cape Town, so that's why I thought I might be a good person to share this story as well as some safety tips at the end. I also think it's important to note that when I first came to Cape Town in 2021, at the end of the year, I had already been to around 25 countries, so I was an experienced traveler at this stage when this experience happened, and that's important to note because I think it's not necessarily the best place to go as your first solo trip, but I'll get into that a little bit later. I'm also the type of person who has always kind of considered safety tips, even if I'm in my home city, Toronto. So that is something to keep in mind as I'm telling this story, because I'm not the traveler who just goes out and doesn't really think about where my phone is, where things are, is not checking out my surroundings. I'm actually the opposite and probably a little bit paranoid at times, but I would rather be paying attention to things and aware of something that could happen and go wrong than be oblivious and worse things happen. And as a little disclaimer, I don't want this video to deter anyone from traveling to South Africa because I do think it's a beautiful country. I still do. It's one of my favorite countries and I will still continue to go back. So that's something to think about because I don't want you to just think that it's an unsafe place because of my one experience. There's so much to experience in Cape Town that's amazing, and South Africa as a whole. Actually, one of the reasons I wanted to share this story time is because I met a lot of tourists who had been to South Africa for a week, 2 weeks, maybe a month. Nothing happened to them and they returned saying, oh, Cape Town is so safe. South Africa is really safe. I don't know what everyone's saying online. And I definitely think that is a misconception. Of course, I hope nothing happens if you visit South Africa, but you have to be prepared before you get there that something could go wrong and what to do to just prevent these types of things from happening. One last thing, even if you have all these tips in mind, something could go wrong. So you can decide if you want to travel to South Africa or not based on how safe you think it is. For me, it's still worth the risk because I love it so much, and I'm done babbling about now, so I'm gonna finally share my story of how I was mugged in Cape Town. So to set the scene, I had been living in Cape Town for about 5 months at this point, and I'd been kind of moving around from hostel to hostel, staying mostly in Greenpoint and Gardens, which is the neighborhood where Kloof Street is, and that is a really popular touristy area. So these are considered to be the safe parts of Cape Town, but with that being said, things can always go wrong no matter where you are, and that's what happened to me. Up until this point, nothing had gone wrong. I'd moved from hostel to hostel. I'd honestly stayed at like 5 or 6 different hostels in the city at this point, and I finally had an opportunity to live in a house with some housemates. And this house was on the edge of the colorful neighborhood that's called Bo-Kaap. And I know I'm not saying that correctly in the right accent, but my Canadian accent just can't say it with the Afrikaans accent or South African accent, so please bear with me. But I was living on the edge of Bo-Kaap and Gardens. So Bo-Kaap is this colorful, beautiful neighborhood that's actually a tourist hotspot for taking photos. It's just known to be a really beautiful street. Well, there's a few different streets with really beautiful, colorful homes, and it is gorgeous. I visited during the day with friends when I first got there, and I had a really nice time, so I didn't really think much of it when I decided to move to the street. I won't fully get into the history of Bo-Kaap, the neighborhood, because there's so much that I could say about it, and I honestly don't know that much in detail, but I will put some links in the description so you can do some research and just figure out a little bit more about the neighborhood if you want to know more. But it's definitely a little bit of a lower income neighborhood, and it's not even necessarily about that, but one street down from Bo-Kaap is a main road. I don't remember the name off the top of my head, but off that main road there are lots of homeless people that sit there and kind of watch people all day looking for opportunities to rob them. I also felt like I was a little bit on guard the whole time I lived on my street because there were so many break-ins on that street, especially with cars. So people's car batteries would be stolen during the day out of their car if they left it in their car on that street. I think it had one of the highest number of like car break-ins. So my housemates that rented cars, they were broken into. Even if there was nothing left on the seat or visible, they still were broken into to try to find something that they could sell or use or whatever. When I moved in there, I didn't really know that the street was like that. Of course, I was a little bit naive, so look into where you're gonna be living. And I was living with two Dutch guys who were my housemates, and they had separate rooms. So we were sharing a 3-bedroom house. I was at the back and I had a really nice view, and I wasn't by the front, like by the street where people could actually get into the house, which I'm really happy about. But I did kind of walk along that street uneasy because I knew that there were some people trying to break in sometimes. And when my housemates weren't around, I would be a bit worried when I'd go to sleep, even though we had slam gates and we had the wired fence and everything and iron poles up against the window. One day I was heading out to go get some groceries, and I had a fanny pack across my chest with a jacket over top, and then I had an empty backpack where I was going to put all my food. And I remember specifically it was a Sunday at like 3 or 4 p.m. The sun wasn't going to set at the time until 7 p.m. So I remember checking the sunset being like, okay, I have enough time to walk there in the daylight. It should be fine. I even thought, should I put on an audiobook or a podcast? And then I thought, no, that's probably not a good idea, even though it's the daytime. So I went through all like the different thought processes of things that I could do to keep myself safe before I left. And then when I left, I walked down towards the main road, and I'll put on screen a map of where I was staying at this hostel that was across the main road and where I was living at the time. And you'll see it was just 1 or 2 streets across. So I walked down towards the main road, and this main road was kind of raised up. So like I was above the main road, and it would slant down towards this point by the hostel where I could cross the street. So I kind of walked along that main road, along lots of traffic coming, and I heard some guys behind me, quite a far way back behind me, say something, probably asking for money. And usually I would ignore them and not say anything back, but for whatever reason I was like, sorry, I don't have anything, or I just said something along those lines. And then out of the corner of my eye, I could see them instantly run towards me, and I knew I was screwed. Instantly they came up, they had knives up to my neck, both of them. I'd never been in a position like this before, so I kind of thought I'd be the type to freeze, like the fight, flight, or freeze response. I thought I would freeze and just hand them everything. But for some reason, I reacted more in the fight response. And this is involuntary, so it's not something I would recommend doing. But I was really pissed off because I kind of, in my head prepared for a bad situation if anything were to happen. I didn't have headphones in, I was making sure I was walking during daylight, and keep in mind this grocery store was only a 5-minute walk away, so it wasn't very far. I wasn't planning on taking an Uber during the day because it was so close, and I was pissed. I was like, are you kidding me? So when they came up to me, instantly I was shaking, but like I tried not to let them see that, and then I was like, get the F away from me. I kind of started yelling at them because that was just my instinct to yell at them. And then I undid my fanny pack, and luckily this fanny pack I had, it had a small pouch at the front and then like a bigger one that I kept my phone in, and my money and like cards were in the small pouch. So I thought for a second, shit, I don't want them to take my phone. So I just opened the tiny slot with my cards, and I'm so thankful that I had a note in there. It was 20 Rand, which is the equivalent of like less than $2 Canadian. So it wasn't very much. As soon as I got that note out and I was opening it, I said, get the F away from me. And I yelled at them. They backed off a little bit, and I took out the money and I was like, get away from me. And I kept yelling at them because I was hoping people would hear me on the street, or people driving past would see me and try to help. Of course that didn't happen. So all I could think of was to throw the note as far back behind me. They chased after it. I just ran back, like past where that little hostel was that I stayed at, crossed that street, ran to the grocery store, and then freaked out. And then on the way back, I was like, well, I'm not gonna walk because these people could be following me. They could know that I'm gonna come back. They could know where I live. So because of that, I took an Uber back, which felt really stupid because it was literally a 60-second drive. But I did it anyway, and that's what happened. I did make it home safe. Nothing happened to me. I'm so thankful and grateful that nothing happened to me. And I probably should have just given them everything because they did have knives up to me. But yeah, that's my story. That's what happened. And I'm just happy nothing worse occurred. And also, when I was staying at the hostel just across the street, I had heard of a few instances that were similar happening throughout the day. So a girl that I was friends with, she was walking with another girl, and they tried to rip her necklace off of her neck, thinking that it was expensive jewelry. So these things happen even if you're staying at a hostel that has security like that one did and is in a touristy area. So that's something to keep in mind. And after that experience happened, every single time I would walk, if I was walking during the day back home, I would always have keys in my hand. I would run. I would have a little bit of cash in case something like that happened again. I would hide my phone. I would actually stop at the hostel where the security was and ask him to watch me walk across the street, run up the hill, and run to my house because I was so worried that it would happen again. Of course, I try to avoid situations where I was walking alone, even during the day, but it felt like it was really annoying because as someone who likes to walk around during the day and is used to living in a safe country and traveling around safe places where you can walk anywhere during the day, it felt really restricting. So I would walk sometimes, but I tried to only walk during the day after that if I was with people. And if I did find myself alone in those situations, I would do what I could to make sure I was safe. Getting into the safety, I honestly don't think I could have done anything that differently other than not said anything to these people at all and kept walking. Although, who knows if they still would have run up to me and tried to mug me. Like, we really don't know, especially if I had headphones on and I was listening to a podcast or something. I wouldn't have heard them. They could have snuck up behind me and held a neck up behind me, around a knife up against my neck. So I honestly think it was like wrong place, wrong time, because I had prepared and I was thinking about all these things, taking safety into consideration. I also have lots of local friends who have been in similar situations. Like, every single local I know has been in that situation or worse at least 2 or 3 times in their life. So it happens. Even if you're living there for many years, you might not have anything happen for a few years and suddenly something could. After many months of living in Cape Town, I learned from locals and friends that have lived there for a while that the safest thing you can do is just avoid walking. That means getting Uber or Bolt throughout the day. And I was also told that Bolt isn't really as safe because they don't vet the drivers as much, and there's been some bad instances happening with Bolt. So because of that, I only used Bolt during the day if it was like a short drive within the city and I know where I'm going and I can follow the driver. And I would use Uber at night because they are vetted heavily and they are known to be safer. I'd also recommend always having your location shared with friends and family and making sure people know if you're getting in an Uber or Bolt or going somewhere where you're going. And if you're going home from an event or something with friends, let them know when you get home safe, because that's kind of the common like courtesy and culture in South Africa. People want to check in and make sure their friends are safe. So that's something that you can do to make sure everyone is safe, make sure people are letting you know when they get home, and just checking in on people. Also, avoid wearing anything flashy like jewelry, watches, clothing that looks expensive. Wear things that look a little bit more run down because you do not want people to think that you have money, trust me. When it comes to phones, I would avoid having your phone out on the street. If you're walking somewhere during the day, look up directions ahead of time, know where you're going, and don't pull your phone out on the street because someone will literally grab it out of your hands. It's also pretty common for people to just rob you by like grabbing your phone out of your back pocket or out of your purse or fanny pack, especially if you're at a club or a restaurant or something like that. That happens all the time. It happened to my friend on New Year's Eve because her fanny pack was not zipped up tight enough and she didn't really have an eye on it. So you have to be really aware, especially if you have an iPhone or an Android smartphone that is quite expensive, because they will be targeting you. I would say you should get a burner phone before going to South Africa and use that when you're out to contact friends and stuff like that, because you don't want to get your expensive phone stolen. So if you have a burner phone, an old iPhone that's really old, or just any sort of phone that you can use to call or text people, I would get one of those before you go to Cape Town. It's something I definitely want to do next time because I didn't feel very comfortable having my regular phone on me at all times. But of course, as a content creator, it's hard to just bring out a phone that isn't very good for camera quality and then not having the ability to take images or videos because I'm worried about it getting stolen. Another thing you can do to keep safe when you're in Cape Town is order your food to the door. So you can obviously get food with Uber Eats, Bolt food delivery, etc. But you can order groceries to your door from a few different chain stores. So I'd recommend doing that. I did that the last time I was back for a month and a half and no regrets whatsoever. I also didn't have to lug everything that was heavy to where I was staying. So it was definitely a good option that I would recommend doing. Next, if you are walking during the day, make sure you're with a group of people or at least have a guy with you because as annoying as that is as a woman, it does protect you a little bit. So keep that in mind. I also wouldn't wander down random streets, like try to stay to main paths and well-trafficked paths. If you're looking for a place to stay when you're in Cape Town, look for a hotel, a hostel, etc. that has many floors because I think that's the safest, especially because people like to break in on like ground floor buildings, and if it has a security guard, that's even better. I'd also say that if you're going hiking, hike in a group because people are targeted on hikes, especially Table Mountain and Lion's Head during the peak summer around Christmas time and New Year's. People are trying to steal from you on those hikes. It's been a huge problem in the last year when I was there, and I didn't feel safe hiking up those hikes, even in a group, honestly. I would bring your burner phone and leave expensive equipment behind because it could just be gone so quickly and that would really suck. So just something to think about if you're going on hikes. And it's annoying because Cape Town has incredible hikes, but I would definitely never go alone, especially after hearing all the stories and seeing what could happen. So you'd think after having this experience in Cape Town, I wouldn't want to return and I would feel too unsafe. But with all of that being said, I still love Cape Town. I think it's stunning city. And the country of South Africa in general is so beautiful. The nature is incredible. People are really friendly. The food is great. So I would definitely return. And I actually did go back about a year later to stay for a month and a half, as I said. So I'm going to return probably again in the next year. And I'll update you if there's any new safety tips that I have in mind. But for now, these are just a few things to keep in mind. And I hope it doesn't completely deter you from visiting, but it's just things to consider before you're booking a trip. While I keep returning to Cape Town, I don't think it's somewhere I would live permanently just because of the safety concerns and feeling like you kind of have to look over your shoulder at all times. And I think that can get exhausting after a while. So while I have amazing friends there and I think it's like a great place to visit, I don't think it's somewhere I would stay long term. Anyway, if you want to check out some other content I have on Cape Town that's a little more positive, you can check out my other playlists here and videos. And I hope you enjoy that and take away something from this video. If you liked it, please hit the like button and I will see you next week for another video. Bye.